what drew you to the study of ecology, and how does it intersect with your interest in evolutionary biology?
So, I was initially, I initially liked, well, when I first went into university, I went to Concordia to start for, I did, I majored in chemistry. And then I don't even know if I had a minor at that point, but, um, I did that. And then I took organic chem and
Dude.
that completely turned me off. Yeah. I
Yeah.
dropped out before the midterm. Like I got a tutor and everything. Um, like we go to Tim Hortons and stuff and like just grind out drawing
Yeah.
out the the chemical structures and stuff. But then I dropped it, and then the next semester I went to MacEwan, and then took like the zoology class. I think it was something with vertebrates, but that just kind of hooked me because it was just they talked about everything related to vertebrates, um, and like I had known about roughly um evolutionary thought and stuff like that, but I didn't know just how related everything is. So like we talked about, snakes and birds and like primates, humans, everything. So that was just a 200 level class. So that kind of got me hooked onto it. And then um, unfortunately for MacEwan, there's not a lot for zoology. So ecology was kind of the next thing. And I mean, I didn't just do it because it's like this is all I have left. I'll just do this. But I did have some interest in it, but it also kind of cross paths a little bit with zoology. So that's I would say that's probably how I got into it. Um in terms of what was the second part?
The second one said, how does it intersect with your interest in evolutionary biology?
Um well, like a big part of what I'm interested in and what I'd like to do is my apply my background in ecology into human origins if I can. So like into the study of our origins as a species. So it's really popular for people in paleoanthropology to look at fossils, but then infer ecology from that. So infer how were these ancient humans or ancient relatives of humans, how were they interacting with their environment? So like looking at different structures and then inferring diet or inferring if they walked in trees or not, or if they walked on the ground, um, stuff like that. So, and I just recently, this is where, and I'm a little bit like proud of this, I'd say. But like I was watching this podcast on human evolution, and there was this guest who had their email at the bottom of the description, like the YouTube description, and I straight up just emailed her, and turns out she has a PhD in evolutionary biology and teaches at like UCF in the US. And I just emailed her and I'm like, I really liked your episode on the podcast. The podcast is called Evolution Soup. It's got like 10,000 subscribers, so not much, but really interesting to me. So then I was like, I told her a little bit about my background, and she kind of said like to use ecology as one of your strengths in if you're thinking of going into like paleoanthropology and anthropology. Because I initially, before emailing her, I kind of thought like I really need to get a lot of experience, which I still most likely do if I want to go into this field. But it was kind of like, oh, I have a lot of background already. I should use this to my advantage when I'm talking to supervisors and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy how connected we are in a way where you can just email somebody with a PhD, right? And actually
Yeah.
just have a back and forth conversation with them, and you can give them advice. And
She literally sent me in the email. She sent me her thesis, so like 200-page thesis, and then she sent me a video of her thesis defense, so like in front of 20 other profs, like an hour and a half video.
Dude, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What draws you into evolutionary biology though? Like, does it give you meaning into your insights into your own life? Like, do you just find it interesting, or what's kind of the utility? Because you could argue that, oh, it's just it happened back then, right? How can you really apply it to now?
Well, I mean, I think it's in part interest. It's mostly interest. But I think it's also there's a little bit of it would be the same. Like I look at it as beauty almost. Just knowing what knowing what we did 2 million years ago, and then looking at not necessarily um like evolution isn't goal oriented, so there's no goal in mind of it. Like the goal isn't to evolution 2 million years ago didn't have a goal in mind saying, oh, in 2025 we'll have electric cars and stuff like that. But it's interesting to look at the differences between like technology and culture and aspects like that 2 million years ago, and then to look at what we have now. So I think part of it is the fact that it's just really interesting to know about primitive, which is not, it's not really, people consider culture millions of years ago to be primitive. I think that's kind of potentially up for debate, but I think just knowing that there was some sort of similarity to us millions of years ago is really fascinating. Like for me, obviously, it would be cooler. It would be cooler to study chimpanzees than to study elephants. I think both would be really cool. But the fact that we share like 98% of our genome with chimps makes it like completely more like as a whole so much more interesting. So I think it's interest, it's beauty, and then it's, I would guess, awe. The fact that you can just study things that literally share so much of your genetic makeup.
I believe it grants us so much insight into the way we think, and it gives us more of an answer when it comes to the subconscious, right? Why do you get angry? Where did this come from? And then when you listen to all these evolutionary psychologists or biologists, they will tell you that, oh, that's back in your primitive days, anger was a way to establish, that you're willing to cause harm to someone. And it had utility back then. Now it doesn't so much. Or how negativity is prioritized because people died when it came to negativity. Like, why prioritize 1,000 puppies when there's a snake right within, right? And it seems obvious at that, like when you're told it, like, oh, that's just I do that every day. But it's actually not, like, people have done so much research onto this and have been looking at the bones and making inferences, and we may not be 100% correct, right? Because we don't have video footage.
No,
we can just make inferences onto kind of their diet based in the bone structure, and based on compare that to what we have today onto what was there 2 million years ago. Because there's decay, right? And there's all these things that get in the way to gain accuracy. But yeah, dude, I can't get enough of evolutionary psychology, biology. And you mentioned it's cooler to look at chimps.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I agree, man. I just finished I think that last year I watched Chimp Empire. It was on Netflix.
Yeah.
You seen that?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and it's just like, yes, they're a lesser form of intelligence, but you almost relate to them so much more than, let's say, a dog, right? Because you see the I don't know if you remember the plot of the documentary, or
Vaguely.
Yeah, but like it started off with one tribe or one chimpanzee group, but then there were some politics involved because one was more in the hierarchy kind of mentality, which included some females in the mix to fight, and some included kind of the alpha mentality, which were they more prioritized just being strong and being the alpha, and then there were some resources involved and some territorial disputes, and it's like, this is, if you just replace these with like with salt or like money, or like if you it like it makes sense for humans, right? The
Yeah.
connection is there.
Yeah.
And it's like you gain so much insight onto us just by learning about the other species and about our history. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say like I would more say they have a different kind of intelligence versus a lesser type of intelligence. Um like obviously if we're gonna like make like an actual tier list about accomplishments, obviously humans,
True.
but the one thing with kind of saying lesser, like a lot of the times we've used kind of like because of the fact that we're super closely related to them, like a lot of people in early science were like, oh, since humans most likely came from Africa, like um and chimps have lower intelligence, people with of African descent might have lower intelligence. So like it's not to say that that's a bad thing to say, but it's just like people use that narrative in not a good way sometimes, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's different skills.
Yeah. Yeah, of
right?
course.
Definitely,
Yeah.
if you put a chimp one on one with a human, like without any tools, they just get ripped apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think intelligence is a tough topic
Mhm.
because it depends what you're measuring, right? Because there's all these different types of intelligences. Like
Yeah.
there's the kinesthetic,
Yeah.
and there's just sheer raw like processing power.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. uh, are there any recent discoveries in human evolution that you find particularly exciting or groundbreaking?
Um I think the tool use, um like most conventionally anthropologists think that stone tools evolved when the genus Homo evolved. So Homo habilis, which was like I think 1.8 to 2.5 million years ago, and then in that period, um, they built stone tools. But a couple years ago, I think either last year or the year before, it could have been a little bit longer, but they found stone tools in another site that was dated to 3 million years ago, associated with another kind of this offshoot hominin. They had these really big molars, um, really big cheekbones. They had like a sagittal crest, like dogs have, for lots of muscle attachments, but which is just kind of the time that they lived around a time where a lot of the hominins, so um, species that were more closely related to us than chimps, a lot of them didn't have these big kind of robust faces. So that was just number one. It's just interesting that they lived around the same time as us. But then number two, there was stone tools found with the bigger face species that I'm talking about, Paranthropus they're called, and that kind of might have pushed back the earliest stone tools to before before Homo. So like with Homo is associated, we usually associate it with like larger brain size, tool use, and then like smaller back teeth. So like that pushes it back at least 500,000 years if it's associated with that species. Um, I think that's probably the coolest thing. A lot of the times nowadays, most of the research focuses on kind of like, I would say anything kind of 1.5, between 2 million and 1.5 years to present. So that's what most of the work focuses on. So I still look at that stuff. So like we're talking about Neanderthals and like early humans. a lot of the times it's stuff dated to like less than a million years. So I like that stuff, but I tend to kind of gravitate more towards like pre 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 genus Homo, so pre 2.5 million years ago. I like that stuff a lot more because they're, I don't know, it's because a lot of those species show tons of intermediate traits. So like talk about the missing link, which first of all, missing link is not really true.
What do you mean by missing link?
Missing link would be like, like between, say, like a missing link would be something that would show chimp characteristics and human characteristics, and there's hundreds of specimens that have been found that show that, but
like when the crossover was
not exactly. Well, there's not exactly, like there's not one. There's times where we can calculate where we think species diverged, but like to know the exactly how much time is hard. But I'm talking more so, like people will object to evolution and they'll say, if we share a common ancestor with chimpanzees, why haven't we found something between that ancestor and between us and chimpanzees? And we have. So yeah, I totally forgot what I was talking about. So much.
But what was between the chimp and the human?
Tons of stuff, man. Traditionally speaking, like what most people would say is the oldest kind of like between chimps and us would be like 7 million years ago, and then 7 million years ago to now there's about 20 different species that you could say are between chimps and humans, if you want to talk about it like that. But yeah.
What's a common misconception people have about evolution that you wish more people understood?
Well, I talked about the missing link thing. I mean, the whole missing link thing. I don't know if you've seen the March of Progress, like on T-shirts or stuff, where it starts with a chimp and then slowly they go from knuckle walking to bent knees, clambering on the ground, and then they're fully bipedal.
I've seen that on the Simpsons.
Yeah, number one for that shows a lot of misconceptions. We can talk about that later. But in terms of actually like the missing links themselves, like species typically don't go, like they don't usually go one species and then the next and then the next. It's usually one and then there's branches. So it's more like the missing link would be like a straight line, and there'd just be one species in between, little dots in between on a line. But evolution is more like a tree. So there's stuff at the base of the tree and then everything just branches out. So, you'll have a small branch at the base of a tree, and then that will lead to something else, and they'll split off, and then these guys will split off, and there'll be lots of splitting like that. So it's not evolution's not linear like that.
Okay. And what causes the splitting?
There's a couple different ways. So speciation, when populations give rise or like split off into different species, usually it's when a population is like a population is isolated from another. So one example is like, if you have a population of squirrel, and then through, over time, a mountain goes up in between the population of squirrels. One population might experience different selective pressures than the other. So they might develop different traits and different adaptations better suit their environment on this side of the mountain. The other guys might, have different adaptations on the other side. So um, that's one way. That's usually the most common way. Um, Other ways are like that's where we have a parent population, and then we're splitting into two different ones. Another one is where you'll have one population, and then you'll have a select group of individuals in that population that kind of they end up making their own population. So you still have the same parent population, then you have a new one. So um, that's another way. So I would say like geographic isolation, and then like kind of where we have that the parent population and just a small isolate of that population. There's other ways I don't know as much, but yeah, those are the two main ones I would say.
Yeah, I know we talked about natural selection
Yeah.
and Charles Darwin. I don't know that's a big interest for you.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, yeah, just like it's just very contextual. Kind of when there was a lot of people think that that Darwin came up with the whole idea of evolution. He didn't. He was just influenced by a bunch of people. Him and another guy, Alfred Russel Wallace, who looked at. He actually was kind of the guy who talked about how he didn't directly say, oh, because we have isolated populations, this directly gives rise to new species, but he observed that we can see different species there's different species on an island that differ from the mainland, and Darwin saw that also with like on the Galapagos. But I think part of what interests me is just like it was just really revolutionary what he came up with and the ideas that he released. So I mean, whether you like it or not, like all of Darwin's ideas surround all of biology, and it's fundamental to all biology. And I don't know, I think we in scientists, we take it for granted, I think sometimes, just kind of how powerful the idea is.
Wasn't he there for the years just on that boat? Just looking at the
he was
the finches.
He was young too. He he just kind of his family was really rich and stuff, but he kind of just went along on the ship and just made hundreds of observations and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just chilling there, hey, looking at the. I
literally.
wonder because he started off with like nothing, right? Like he just developed the theory, and then looked at like the beaks and how they consume insects and how the certain birds survived better than the birds who didn't have that specific beak, and more over time the birds that are selected for better mates or better beaks had a better chance of consuming the food, and so the ones that just didn't have that trait just died off. And that seems, it's so uncomfortable for people, like that idea, because if you apply it to human beings, right, it can be like it works as well. Like a person that is stronger, like it's more robust, it's more resistant to cancers, more resistant to obesity. And if you make these observations, and it's like that's just the way it is. Like that's not to say that we shouldn't have compassion for the people that are suffering. It's just like the way life is designed, that the species, and within that species the organisms that develop certain attributes that favor them, such as maybe better colors to attract more mates. Maybe they have a sharper beak to help them pierce fish or insects and drill into trees more. maybe that's what helps them. But that's just the truth, man. Right? Uh, you can say, oh, it doesn't exist, but there's clear evidence onto that. And like
Yeah.
religion
Yeah.
aside, and all these uh, politics, religion aside, that's what was observed, and that's been peer reviewed.
Yeah.
And we see that maybe not we can't observe it upon centuries, right? But we can, it's even evidence in years, right? The way like fruit flies. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think like, and I'll say one thing about what you said about the beaks. Um, it's partly like, I would say it's more so like not the better behaviors that survive. It is better behaviors, but it's what works for, it's what makes the individual survive better and reproduce better. So if like one beak might work better, you know, getting into trees, but if that's not going to do anything about, um about improving its chance of surviving, and not or surviving and reproducing, then it's yeah, like it's die out. And it's, I do think it's kind of, it is a little bit grim to think about it like that, but it's like it's what happens. And it's
yeah.
not, it doesn't happen instantly, it's gradual. So it's not that the individuals like, oh, we don't have, oh shit, we don't have good beaks, like we're gonna die in the morning. No. But it's just like, it's a struggle for existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Survivability is great and all, but if you don't have the ability to attract the mates, if you don't have the ability to reproduce,
Yeah.
then that trait's just gonna die off, right? If
Yeah.
if it's not valued by the other sex, or if it's
Exactly.
not,
Yeah.
if you do have a higher chance of reproduction, but you can't survive, right? Then that doesn't work as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, dude, I get into that these like really weird kind of thoughts of, oh man, like I'm getting sick. This is just natural selection. Right? This is Darwin's work. Right? This is, I'm probably not gonna be able to reproduce now. Like this is it.
Yeah.
But then you realize that there's more to that,
Yeah.
right? There's technology.
Yeah.
There's people are a lot more compassionate than animals. Like animals are very they can show compassion, but they're a lot more vicious, right? When it comes to survival of the fittest. I've seen those like certain birds, man, just like kill off when they're young, right? Those I love the animals. I love nature. I hope I definitely, the Animal Channel is definitely my
Yeah.
my go-to
Nice.
here and there. Yeah, yeah. But it's vicious, man. I don't we're definitely really blessed to be here and have conversations like these, because if we let natural selection take its course and we aren't civil, right? Like we'll just pillage and just do whatever
and I
we
mean,
want.
like, this sounds completely ridiculous, but like if you get your leg ripped off, you can call the ambulance and go to a hospital. If you're an animal and something rips your leg off, you're just sitting there. There's no like,
Yeah.
I do agree we're way more fortunate.
Yeah, dude. But I've seen,
Obviously.
I look at some animals and I'm inspired sometimes. I when I was a kid, I saw this bird with an arrow in its chest, and it just kept flying, dude. It didn't question whether it was, gonna see 5 more days. If it didn't question, what does it say about their character and fear and willpower. No, it just does. My dog's hind legs stop working, and he doesn't give a fuck. He just keeps going, man. He doesn't compare his life before. Like he doesn't experience grief. And that's kind of a blessing and a curse to us, because as soon as one thing's ripped away from us, we're like, oh, what is this? Why did this happen to me? There's so many other people in the world. And it's just, That's why I like the stoic mentality, right? Which is just accepting life for what it is, and easier said than done. But definitely
Definitely.
a lot of the flaws that we do have is suffering in our imagination a lot more than just that's just living, you know, which is
Yeah.
where we could take a lot of notes from animals with their lack of conscious awareness. Yeah, yeah, which is dope. What do you look into a lot of evolutionary psychology as well?
Um, no, not particularly, if
You're
I'll be honest
strictly
with you.
biology? Yeah. Yeah.
More or less, yeah. Yeah. And like I like genetics. Well, I like genetics to a degree. I like understanding, like I have ADHD, so it's um like I'm kind of, when I'm fixated on something, I'm
Yeah,
totally
you full
fixated on
on.
it.
Yeah.
Um and like especially with passions and stuff, and it can be hard to find other passions sometimes with it.
Yeah.
So um like I psychology not really, like genetics a little bit, um chemistry not really. Like I like the macro stuff. Like I like stuff that you can kind of look at, and I like the microscopic stuff too, but
Yeah.
like large scale
You like
bones and
more
stuff.
like the natural selection, bones, kind of like actual physical
Yeah,
stuff that you can see,
yeah,
and like in regards to their diets
yeah,
back thousands of years ago.
yeah.
What's a
I like this is nice with ecological work. Like I like going into the field, I like collecting data, then I like coming back
Yeah.
and then going on the computer and
seeing
comparing it to
what
other people's studies, doing tests, and then if I'm wrong, I'm wrong,
yeah, kind of forensics type.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I read the book with Yuval Noah Harari, the Sapiens. We mentioned
Yeah.
that earlier, and he mentioned foragers a lot and how back then people actually lived longer. I don't know if this is actually true. I just take his word for it. It sounded like he knew his stuff. Uh, foragers actually lived longer because they were more open to all these different diets. They pretty much did a marathon every day, and they the Homo sapiens that did survive, they were adept at fighting off lions. They were adept at selecting berries, versus nowadays we don't need to worry about that stuff. Like we just need to.
No, they just tested shit out. They just tested shit out, and if it worked, it worked.
Like, oh, Jimmy fucking died.
No, there's no berry field guide.
Yeah, there's no Google, no ChatGPT to save your ass. There was no skip the dishes, right? You had to be able to differentiate, and it was subtle, dude. If you make the wrong decision of downing one berry that's poisonous, that's you're dead. And if you're the head of the tribe, like you're done. And if the next of kin are weaker, everybody's wiped out. But I find that so fascinating.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And then now it sucks that we're a lot more advanced nowadays, but we're like so weak, Like sure there's working out and sure there's better diets, but with all this stuff we've become soft, man. Like our ancestors would be just looking at us being like, what happened?
Yeah.
You're just, back then we had to fight off lions and just survive in -30 weather and survive through anything.
No, it was literally, I mean, like I don't get it. I don't get up every day, and I'm very fortunate that I don't have to. Like being like, I need to make sure I survive today, but like they have to make sure every day that they survive. They're doing like there wasn't time for sitting down and picking up a rock, the Xbox rock or whatever,
or talking about our feelings.
Yeah, no, it's just getting food and making sure you're not fucking eating.
Yeah. So, constantly being aware of our surroundings. I think that's an explanation as to why a lot of men have ADHD, according to evolutionary psychology, biology. Is back then, men were constantly hyper aware of the things that were around us. Like if we weren't constantly scanning for things, or constantly on the move, like the children and the women would be dead.
Yeah. Hypertension. Yeah.
Yeah. You were constantly just like there's no time to just read a book and just chill.
No.
You know, that was not a privilege that was given to the alphas at the time, which were typically the men.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just, I find that fascinating too when I hear stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's why I can't sit still sometimes. That's why when I'm reading a book, I can't understand some of it sometimes because my mind's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. What's a tribe that you find the most interesting, whether it be in today's tribe or back thousands of years ago?
Tribe do I found interesting? Or like a species?
Anything, man. I know that you ever heard of the Terra Humera, something like that tribe? They run, dude. They don't.
I don't
They
think
just
so,
run
no.
marathons in a day just for fun, like for their.
I think the groups that like the groups that move, so they're kind of nomadic, but they also have livestock. Like I think it's really cool, the groups that like they have huge groups of livestock, but they're moving around all the time. So I don't know, I think that's cool to, like, it's interesting to think about the fact they're moving, but they're also bringing an entire other. They're bringing a huge group of species, a huge group of animals with them. So I don't know. I find that interesting.
That existed millions of years ago.
Well, it still exists. It still exists today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's in the. I know there's a lot of tribes that haven't had any outside contact.
Mm-hmm.
And like scientists just study them from like helicopters, like miles and miles away.
There's one. I forget what it's called, but really famous. Like Christian missionary went and was killed. Yeah, was killed and like body dragged on the beach and stuff by the tribe.
Dude. Yeah. It seems so barbaric to us, but to them, it's just like, yeah, this is the protocol. Right? This is a scary guy. We don't know what he wants. Probably wants to kill us.
I mean, it's also like my thought is like, we don't need to go around and go onto other people's land. We just because like,
yeah.
It's an intrusion, I think. Like if you go there and people are hostile, you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, just leave them alone. Eventually they'll make like, the contact necessary.
Like, I love science, but we don't need to study everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's true. Let them have their peace. Before we continue, we got a word from our sponsors, Soda Physicist. Based right here in Edmonton, Soda Physicist offers fast, reliable CO2 refills and delivery straight to your door. Whether you're a home brewer, a bar, or a restaurant, they make sure you never run out of fizz. Why make trips to the store when you can get CO2 delivered straight to your door? You can't get that from the competitors or the big stores. Order now at Soda Physicist.
Very much like a t-shirt guy in the winter, but then when I go outside, I bundle up.
Yeah.
So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, man, it's been really, really cold out there. Or compared to last week, at least.
It's just windy.
Yeah.
Cold wind.
So have you had the opportunity to be involved in any research projects during your time at MacEwan? If so, what was the experience like?
So I've done 2. First one. Yes. I'm just thinking. The first one was 2 summers ago, and then last summer as well. With a prof, we went to Kananaskis for 2 weekends in the summer, and we looked at you know what pika are?
Pike?
Pika. Do you know what pika?
Like the fish.
No, it's a really small look it up if you want. It's a really Pika. It's so they're lagomorphs, so they're related to like to rabbits and stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of the size of your fist, really fluffy. But they only live in high altitude.
Oh man, I did I did a research project in this in elementary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Sweet.
grade 5.
Yeah.
I'm well versed in it.
Yeah, they're awesome. They live in super high elevation in the rocks and stuff.
That's cute.
And they're basically what we looked at is it was with a prof. Sorry, it was with a prof. I already said that. We looked at, so we recorded their calls and stuff, and then did a bunch of stats and stuff, and looked at is there individual variation in these calls? Like, do these individual pika have different calls? And if so, what do we think their purpose is? So that was super easy. I did, like, that wasn't even a course. That was like kind of a research grant. Like, it was just one of those things where I just emailed a prof and was like, are you doing anything? And then
how did you
got on board.
observe them without scaring them? You had to be with binoculars.
So they're really habituated to humans. So
okay,
yeah, you can go, like,
you just pick one up.
No, well, okay, no, but yes, no, you can't really. But my friend, who was the other student, she did. And then and my prof had been doing this. The prof had been doing it for like 20 years, and she'd never picked one up.
Just picked them.
And yeah, bro, it went onto her hand.
Oh wow.
So
must be an animal whisperer.
Yeah,
they're. Whisperer.
I don't know how she did it, but yeah, they're super used to humans. So you can, like, we kind of just find a spot where you can see one, and then get your recorder ready and like record and stuff, and they'll run past your foot and stuff. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the results of the study?
So
like you said, you did different coats.
Yeah. Different like, we found overall that there is differences between their calls. Unfortunately, with like it just being kind of like an undergraduate project, we didn't really have time to, like, all we did was we just isolated the calls and then put them into a stats program.
Your calls would
calls would be the squeaky high pitched calls that the pika make.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I thought it was coats.
Sorry, no,
calls.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been really like the differences must have been really subtle though.
They're very subtle. Yeah. And it also,
like, how do you differentiate?
we looked at pitch and frequency and like the number of wavelengths, like indicative of the intensity of the call. But anyways, the results overall, we did find individual variation. We didn't, like I said, since it's undergrad, we didn't really have time to look at why there was variation. But we think it's kind of like, we think it's probably due to the fact that if you can emit calls only when you need to, for enemies versus just doing calls for your neighbor, so for a fellow pika, then it's more beneficial to save the calls for enemies and predators than it is for doing it to other pika. It was the data recording part was fun, but the kind of figuring stuff out at the end was not very fun, and it was kind of rushed. So yeah.
I've heard of monkeys doing the same thing too.
Yeah.
Where the different calls in regards to their pitch and the duration of the call.
Yeah.
The difference would be very subtle, but one could be alerting the other monkeys, or one could be, just laughing at another monkey.
Yeah.
So it's crazy just how much pitch and just duration and the frequency can play such a big role into how the different animals communicate.
Yeah.
what area of research in ecology or evolutionary biology would you most like to explore in the future? And before we get to that, you said there was one more.
Yeah.
There was one more research.
This is with the poster the presentation I'm doing on Friday. So this was an actual credited class, research class with a prof. There was 2 students. So basically, we looked at there's an organization in Elk Island at the park that has a bunch of wildlife cameras, and they look at kind of animal movement across the fence lines. So we looked at a bunch of the pictures that they took, and we kind of analyzed them and I guess did tests on them. But what we were interested in looking at for me was, like, the fact is Elk Island, it's completely fenced around. That's to protect the bison and the elk and stuff. But ultimately it's not good as a whole because it prevents them from dispersing and doing a bunch of stuff, going over the fence and in the fence. So that's for the big animals. But I was interested, or I am interested, in the smaller animals because, like, we know deer, we know coyotes, we know they can all go through the fence. So I was kind of interested in knowing. And when I say fence, it's a wire fence, but below there's gaps that the animals can cross. So deer and coyote can all go under there. So
like dig little holes too if they don't fit too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was kind of interested in knowing, like, the gap that's there that we've kind of allowed, is that promoting or kind of hindering the movement of the smaller animals like the deer and stuff. And we found that it isn't. I mean, it's kind of obvious, they can still go under it. And we found that coyotes are crossing the most under it. Deer are crossing it a lot. So
they can fit?
Yeah, they can fit.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
It's like, I think the openings are like 2 to 3 feet from kind of ground up, 2 to 3 feet. So,
and they can also jump pretty high too.
They can jump really high. So yeah, like it was interesting to look at all the pictures online and kind of confirm, like, yes, the fence isn't good for, because we can see a bunch of pictures of elk and bison that they're not crossing at all, and they can't really cross at all. Like, yes, it's not good for them, but despite that, this fence still allows some movement of other animals under it. So it has its pros and cons. So yeah, that was more recently. That was last semester, and now I'm working on it a little bit more.
So the smaller species, like the coyotes and even deer, it has no effect onto the way they get around and their survivability?
Well, it's not that it has no effect. Like, it's still a barrier. There's not always, like, not every animal, and like it could sometimes just literally be blocked off, by a tree or something, or by another object. It's not that it doesn't do anything for them. It's just that it doesn't hinder their movement as much as we might think that it does. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of them crossing the roads too, hey? So did you guys take that into account?
No, we didn't. We like this would be the fence line, and then you literally just put a camera here so you can see exactly you can see still shots of who's going under the fence and who's not. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. You could do that on your own, hey, even without the official kind of MacEwan study.
Yeah.
And
just
make observations yourself.
The nice thing, like, it's a great experience, but it's also kind of like, it's a really good thing to have on your CV too, because it is a class, but it's also showing that you've done some sort of research. So I kind of had to, like, my friend did it. she was the one who did research. She was the other student who she caught the pica, or pica climbed on her hand. But she had done one of those projects before on a different subject, and she was like, you should really jump on it. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, what area of research in ecology or evolutionary biology would you like to explore in the future?
Um, Paleoanthropology. So
Hmm.
that's just um basically the study of humankind through the fossils. So like paleontology is the study of animals with the fossils, but and then anthropology just applies it to humans. But yeah, like I didn't not until recently. I kind of I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I do now. Um, Unfortunately, there's just not a lot in Canada for it at all. So um, more than likely, I'll have to um go to a different like go somewhere either in Canada um or the States or Europe or something, because there's just better, not necessarily better like classes, but some of the facilities are just a little bit
Is it
like
because more
preferable.
bones are found in the other countries, or is it just the schools or?
A lot of the from what I've found is a lot less universities in Canada do actual like have a portion of it where you're actually going to Africa or something to dig, which like that's what I want to do. So
Are the are all the bones gonna be dug up one of these days? Right? Because I guess with every single passing year, there's more and more bones that get found. Do you think at one point we're just gonna find them all?
no, because everything there's always stuff that's there's always there's always stuff that's dying. So
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, like bones doesn't like fossils doesn't just mean like everything that comes to the surface, like and and is a bone is going to be a fossil. But um, I mean, to give an actual not smart ass answer to your question, like I would say I don't know because not everything fossilizes. Like not every bone fossilizes. There's there's erosion. Um, I mean, erosion's the main one, but there's like erosion and then effects from rivers and oceans and stuff like that. Like just because something dies and goes into the ground, it doesn't mean it's going to fossilize. And then if it fossilizes, it doesn't mean it's going to be in one shape. Like um, mammals, for example, like the very first mammals, for example, like I don't know, a couple 100 million years ago, like they're this big, they're all that
Mm.
tiny, so their jaws are like the jaws are the size of your fingernail. So like that's just one example of it's so small. If it gets churned and stuff under the ground, it's odds are it might not survive and preserve. So, but I don't know. I don't think so. It would just like we're
Yeah.
uncovering. There's new species. We're uncovering new living species every year, and we're uncovering new species from fossils every year. So
Mm.
it's I don't know. There's just so many.
That's fair. How do you think research in ecology can contribute to conservation efforts and public awareness about environmental issues?
Well, I think a lot of the times I think first off, making research open access is important. Like I do research on what I'm interested in, and from what I found, it's really annoying when you wanna find an article online to help you uncover a certain topic and you have to pay for it. So I think making everything open access is important. I think like the language sometimes is just not very good. It's just a lot of jargon and stuff. So like what I mean is a lot of the times, like when you look in a scientific article, there's just language that you can't understand. And like a lot of the like when I talk to other students, it's kind of like, oh, we'll just, look up what that means if you don't mean it, if you don't know what it means. But a lot of people, they don't have the patience for that, which kind of stinks. But ultimately, you have to make it easier to understand, because if people are trying to figure stuff out about like a conservation initiative and they can't understand it, or it's just too much, like it almost makes them feel it almost makes you feel stupid. So
Yeah, nobody's reading like a 10-page paper with
No.
all these different like the deep lingo. It's like, what is this? What am
Yeah.
I can't understand the first paragraph. Why should I keep going?
So I think open access and then easy to understand articles is important. I think, as well as on top of that, like I don't know, I feel like you have to target the correct audience. I think that like I don't think there's a lot of, and I don't think there's enough promotion of conservation outside of like students and adults. Like I don't like usually when there's scientific presentations with kids, it's it's chemical presentations, or if it's about ecology, it's not usually about conservation issues or climate change. It's just, which is cool, but it's just we'll talk about a certain animal. But I think it's really important that we talk to younger people about conservation as well, and educate them on the fundamentals of evolution, and obviously be okay with different perspectives. But yeah, I think, I don't know, it's I didn't really understand conservation when I was a young kid. So I think it's a good idea if we can push that back at a younger age, instead of just talking to adults about it, because adults can understand it, but there are ways that we can make kids understand it, like not victim blaming and saying, even though a lot of climate change is human caused, like making sure that we're framing it not as it's like, oh, it's your fault to a young kid, but just educating.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't remember talking anything about conservation in the science curriculum.
Yeah,
until
I've
like
heard
junior high.
like ecological footprints,
Mhm.
like in elementary, but nothing really too deep.
Yeah.
Right? Just kind of gave a general consensus, general awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, what do you think of the like talks about like bringing the mammoth back through like genetic modification? You've heard of that?
I think it's.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked into it much, but I think the idea of it is really cool. I think another. I don't know if they've got any new like if they've recovered. I don't think they've recovered any new species or brought any species back. But there's, I think in Russia there's like a Pleistocene park, which is kind of, they have this kind of area where they're dedicating it to kind of the ecology of the Pleistocene, which was millions of years ago. So, like having a bunch of animals that are living today that were living back then, and like kind of having them in there together, which is cool. But I don't know. I think the mammoth thing is awesome.
I think it's mammoths are really closely related to elephants,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
think they're just getting an elephant, mating it with something else, or just trying to get the elephant's DNA and just tweaking it
Yeah.
to match a mammoth.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Just like crazy,
Yeah.
man. What do you think of like dinosaurs though? You think would you want them back?
Um,
Jurassic Park?
I mean, like you're talking like the T Rexes and all that stuff.
Yeah, dude.
I
Yeah.
mean, I
Or
don't know. They would take up so much of our resources.
they
I
would.
don't think people understand that.
Yeah.
Like,
With the zoos and
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah,
And feeding them whole cows and everything.
yeah. They eat or they
Yeah.
ate so much. Like already with
Yeah.
elephants and stuff.
Yeah, dude, I'm well versed and I've watched all the Jurassic
Yeah.
Parks and I know what happens. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, heavy metal and music.
Yeah.
That's a big passion of yours as well.
hmm
How did you first get into heavy metal? And what are some of your favorite bands or subgenres?
So I would say like metal's kind of a you could call metal kind of like um metal evolved from hard rock, so like starting to listen to hard rock and stuff like that was, I don't know, early for me, like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. But Black Sabbath was big, for sure, because they were like an earlier band, so very influential on other bands. But right now it's like Iron Maiden and Rush. Rush isn't really metal, but like Maiden, and I like Judas Priest. I like British 80s metal is really good. But like I'll listen to Metallica and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, they were just here in Edmonton.
Yeah, I didn't get
Went to
to I didn't get to go.
Dude, I heard it was crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 4-day bender.
Yeah, I'm quite upset I didn't get to go. Maybe
Yeah.
some other time though.
Yeah, they'll come
see.
back one of these days. Yeah.
I don't know. Edmonton's interesting because it's not like whenever bands come, they're for sure they're going to Vancouver, they're gonna go to Toronto and Montreal and like maybe Edmonton. So I don't know. Like I saw Iron Maiden. That was like a dream. I saw them like I think 2 years ago at Rogers, and that was amazing. But they hadn't come here for like 15 years, I think. So I don't know. Edmonton's you just have to have it perfect if you're going to be able to go to for me at least, if you're going to go to like in Edmonton, if you're going to a band you really want to see, you just have to pray that they're going to come, because I don't know.
Hit or miss.
Yeah.
But what about that genre that really resonates with you? Like, do you listen to it on the way to the class, hypes you up, or workout? Or,
yeah. I mean, I listen to it. If I'm listening to music, I'm listening to that. So
yeah.
I do like other music, but I don't listen when it's just myself. I don't listen to stuff outside of metal. Working out on the way, like in the car, everything. Can't really do lyrics and studying. That's the only thing. But yeah, I'm always listening to it.
Yeah, I went through a little, hard rock, heavy metal phase, and I was listening to songs like "Down with the Sickness" by Disturbed. I just felt so revved up.
That's what I think. I think that's what like resonates with me. I don't know. It's loud and it's fast and like the vocals are just they're not always like super, growly. I think that's a misconception that people have about it. But like the vocals are amazing. The guys sing super high. Some bands.
And then the music is very elaborate.
Yeah.
It's very like a lot of people seem to think that it's not as well developed because it's like loud and it's just all over the place. But when you look into it, it's actually like a really hard like genre to be able to master, to learn the songs.
Well, if you think about it, for me, it takes talent to compose a song that's loud and like a heavy metal song that is loud and that sounds good, because you can make songs that are loud but they just sound like shit. So
Yeah, yeah.
like, yeah, a lot goes into it. And it's like, I don't know.
Like a lot of those guitar licks, riffs,
Yeah.
man, they're just so
I know.
so intricate.
Yeah.
Like how are you going that fast?
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I play bass guitar, but I would never
Mhm.
I would never play guitar. It would just be too overwhelming. There's 6 strings and there's just
Yeah.
millions that you can play. Bass,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you can play on bass, but there's only 4 strings, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, it's just, bass is just easy for me, so I would,
Yeah.
guitar's a feat that I don't think I'd ever go to.
I find bass makes up a song though, like makes up like the potatoes of the song, you know?
Meat
Like
and
with,
potatoes.
yeah,
Bass and
it's
drums.
just like you feel that shock in the heart.
Yeah.
I feel that vibration that always like gets me revved up. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Do you think there's a connection between science and music, especially in terms of how both involve patterns, structures, and deep exploration? Bit of a stretch.
Bit of a stretch. I mean, they both, like, I don't know, they're both methodical, like science. They both have a method to them, and kind of they're constructed, and, well, constructed music more, but they both kind of follow a method and a layout. And science has, you can think of the genres. We can kind of think of them. They might have a common ancestor somewhere that was, early flutes or something like that. That might be a stretch. That's a total stretch.
Yeah, dude, that could be a research study.
Yeah, maybe.
You. Yeah.
So that portion, I think we like to kind of group in science, and well, humans as a whole, we like to put stuff in boxes, which is sometimes good, sometimes not good, but like we put them into genres and stuff, music genres, and then categorize species and stuff and different things of science. I honestly don't know.
Dude, what sucks about studying evolution, right, is in the music part, there's no save button, there's no like residue of the musical talents back 2 million years ago. I bet you there was, man. I bet you there's just some guy in the tribe with like a couple strings, and he just knows how to just shred.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey man, technology is always evolving, so maybe we'll find something, some link.
Exactly, man.
Yeah. But no, it's like the way we always organize everything into like certain slots, whether it be like science or music, and then it gets into these categories where it's like, how do you even differentiate that?
Yeah.
And then there's like the whole categorization.
I know.
to it, which,
and there's a there's a hierarchical thing about it, like ranking and stuff, and it's like, I don't know, it goes back to I don't know, if you rank something, at least in science and stuff, ranking something, then you can just justify one thing's better than the other, and I mean, I try not to think about it like that when I'm like, it's easy to categorize, oh, this group has tools, let's put them all into here. This group doesn't have tools. Oh, the group with tools is better. No, it's like not like that, but yeah.
If you could design a research study in the psychological or cultural effects of metal music, what would you focus on?
Probably like, that's a tough question. I don't even remember the answer I put on the questions. I don't know. It'd be cool to like see, it would be cool to see how people react to it and to compare that to kind of other music. Not saying it, might get similar results, might get different results, but like it'd be cool to kind of just see, take a bunch of people, make them all listen to the same music and kind of see how how the neurotransmitters are moving and stuff. Again, I don't know.
Yeah, and then you
I
put
don't know
that
jack shit about that stuff.
Yeah,
But
you put dopamine levels
Yeah.
when it
okay,
fluctuates.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah. With music, hey, it's so subjective. Because like one person may like jazz, and another person may like Taylor Swift, and it's like one person could be subjected to country, and it'd be
Yeah.
torture.
Yeah,
But it would be their saving grace.
yeah.
Like I wonder how we evolved from that. I mean, like where did we disperse? Like was it like you could argue that culturally growing up, that's what your parents heard, but then you when you keep digging, it's like, oh, that's what their parents heard and maybe their peers. But then there was always like a source, like a root, like within music. And the more you kind of correlate both of them, it's like you will find something.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what it is, because we're always, with the way things have been, is it always starts off with one singular focal point, and then as time progresses, right, whether it be evolution, music, gaming, we just disperse into all these different branches, to a point where the people in those sectors don't have no idea where that field was 100 years back.
Yeah.
Right? Like even with with evolution, we know Charles Darwin, but before that there was already somebody that's established that, and he's just well known for it. Right? But even then, I'd say maybe 1,000 years later, like maybe we'll forget Charles Darwin. He'll be replaced by someone else. Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons, like, why I like science so much is like, it's good to be proven wrong, and it's good.
Yeah.
It would be, if something replaced the, I'm gonna be honest, it would take a fuck ton to replace kind of the foundations of evolutionary biology. I don't know, it might happen. It would take a lot, but I think one of the beauties of science is that it's always changing, and there's always, ideas are always getting replaced, and a core idea that's been at the base of something might be replaced in a few years, or might be replaced next week.
Yeah. Do you remember when people or adults were telling you to stay away from the microwave, or don't put your phone underneath your bed, or underneath your pillow?
Yeah.
Like now I don't hear anyone say that. Now it's all about the microplastics. Now it's all about the carcinogens in the air from like the toxins, right? And maybe it'll be debunked, who knows? But there's all these things that growing up, and even with the food, culturally, like a lot of growing up, my family always told me to eat all my food because there's kids in Africa starving. Now I don't really hear that anymore, because obesity rates have gone up so high that no, it's not that kids are starving anymore. You should stop eating because they're dying of obesity. Like it's stuff like that, where it's like, as you move throughout the years, something gets disproven and something comes into play, but then 10 years later, the thing that was disproven was actually proven back again, and the one that was established actually ends up being the one that's not.
Well, I think it's even just cool, like, it's not just science, like sayings that sayings that people say, like
Riz.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude.
Culture changes.
Yeah, I was I'm always hesitant into using those words that
like
get
Riz?
acclimated, but but then there's no other way to describe kind of how things go, because it's just locked into my vocab, because I hear all my buddies say it. I'm like, okay, Riz. I know when swag was a thing, and I was in like grade 5.
I know there's stuff like there's stuff like dab.
Or like dab, dude.
Like, that's still in your vocabulary. You don't say it ever, but it's still there.
Dab, like wheels. Remember that? Like, bro, he's got square wheels. I remember there's this kid, man, that like flirted with all the chicks in our class and constantly got rejected, and everybody would say he had square wheels.
Or Matt, or like when people when people were like not at the relationship but they had a thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm like, where did this?
A
Who
thing,
made this, man? Yeah, fuck, dude. It's such good times. I remember with like for a TBH. Remember that was a thing, dude. Like what the who'd like see you around the halls? You
Yeah,
know,
the 1111 and all that
yeah,
shit.
yeah, never talk to you like for your rate. Like what the fuck? Where did this come from? Yeah, and apparently they don't do that anymore.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
that was
my
yeah.
like one of my buddies posted
Yeah.
like an Instagram picture, and like at the end he put a screenshot of one of those like for an for an emoji.
That's so funny. Or like fucking streaks, dude. Remember that?
When people would just send a picture and write
Streaks?
streaks.
Yeah, like what was
Yeah.
that, man?
The obsession with streaks.
I think that was I reflected on that one day, and I think it was because we wanted to feel included, and this was like the more streaks you had, the more friends you had, even though you'd never talk to them. It's like
Yeah, the only word that you have between you two is
yeah,
streaks.
streaks. You see them in the hallways.
Streaks.
You guys have a 400-day streak, but you've never said a word to them. It's like what the
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally remember that stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's kind of cool when you get older. There's not like a like I didn't think about stopping to do streaks. I just did it.
Yeah, you just kind of grow out of it.
Exactly.
Right? Like it was cool back then. Everybody was doing it, but then now it's like you're a degenerate if you do that stuff.
More than that.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, man, that's thank you so much for
Of course.
coming on the Long Term Podcast. I find all this stuff interesting. If you ever want to come back one of these days,
Yeah.
talk about evolution, and I'll brush up on my
Yeah.
on the theories that I learned, and read some more books about it. Love that stuff, man.
Sweet, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you again.
Of course.
I appreciate you.
Of course.
As always, to everyone listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope, strengthen your faith, and keep it long term. Jack, Elliot, everyone. Peace.
Sweet.